the question that I have for you really is that the overwhelming majority of my moderate Muslim friends, and I genuinely mean that they're moderate, they're not sort of practicing, they're not that committed, they're pretty relaxed about it. They hate you with a passion, and they hate the reformers within Islamic circles with such vitriol and passion that I just find genuinely bizarre. Why is that, firstly? I can tell you what they tell me about Muslim reformers. They think that they're all sellouts or Mossad agents or something of that sort. But what's your take on it? And Douglas, given the numbers that you've presented and the sort of statistics that you've presented and the rise of what's now being dubbed the alternative right and these kinds of dimwits is the only polite word that I can use, where do you see this going? I mean, the level of social conflict that we're seeing and the rise of new forms of very anti-Semitic right-wing movements that are also anti-Islamic is pretty scary. Where do you see this going?
Often also have the same problem. You know, we don't really know Islam. We just pick the bad bits and we're like, this is Islam, and we're doing the same thing. And I think the trick is that we need better education about Islam and Islam's, what historically it's just been all over the place. Just like in any religion, as you'd expect. So, and the problem is we can then move it away from the Saudis who promote what I call like a cult version of Islam. So my question is, I'm not sure how this can be done. So this is not a question about theology or, this is a question of literacy, right? How do we convert this amazing academic work to make it digestible for people? How do we compete with the reams and reams of publishers that are funded by often Saudi Arabia and these kind of, Azhar and all these kind of things? I know in Quilliam you have like the amazing Farhan Amer, who does some fantastic stuff with hermeneutics. But other than her, I don't really see that many people who are writing stuff that, everyone else can read. I mean, the stuff I've had to read is just undigestible. So how do you do that? That's my question.
Thank you. Again, could I ask everybody to be quite quick? Good to Douglas first.
These are very, very good questions, and one wants to sort of dwell on all of them, but let me be very quick. First of all, just a little bit about the Saudi point. I mean, with all of these regimes, we all just have to work out ourselves to what extent are they actually religious, and to what extent are they riding the tiger, and to what extent are they just taking the piss. And if you go around London now, you will see all of the princes of these so holy religious countries who have flown over their Ferraris and raced them down Knightsbridge like Grand Theft Auto. And when, as they sometimes do, they crash one, they get out and leave it there and get into another. Life is a computer game for these rich brats. And I think, by the way, they don't get enough hell from this country or from anyone else for the hypocritical people they are. Because these are the same people who come to London and play the rich dauphin and go back and they take part in a system which enriches them, which kills everybody who would be our friends. And I think it's just the reprehensible situation this country is in, among others. As for, very quickly, if I may, the gentleman there, I can't do justice to that excellent question, but just one thing. I mean, I am, like a lot of other people, very nervous about the idea that the rest of time has to be spent in a sort of Islamic theological discussion. There are some great box sets I still haven't seen, and I sort of think people are better off doing that than wading through Bukhari and, this is a very interesting hadith. But I will leave Maajid to answer the wonderful question about why he's hated. But may I say, as somebody who doesn't hate Maajid, that one explanation for this is that what he says hurts a lot of people. And as we all know, what hurts you most is what is most truthful. And that may be one of the reasons why. As for your question of where's it going, about the statistics I cited in Europe, are not good, I'm afraid. Not good at all. And one of the reasons is that for years now, everybody who has alerted anybody else to this problem has been smeared with the most vicious, the most violent, the most appalling names, the career-ending names. And that has happened to everybody, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, white, black, brown. It's happened to everybody. I have black friends who've been called racists because of saying some things about extreme Islamist groups that aren't, au fait. It's been endless. And meantime, we have the serious problem of people totally lacking distinction on political sides that they feel generally opposed to. The continent now is awash with, our continent is awash with rising parties of the right, not all of which are far right, certainly not all of which are fascist, some of which have voiced very big concerns about Islam. Instead of identifying everybody who voices these concerns as fascists, I think a much better use of our time is to look seriously at what they believe, really analyze the thoughts, really find out if they are anti-Semites, if they're actually racists, and so on and so forth. But, very few people exercise that kind of judgment because they sort of need all of these guys to be Nazis. A lot of people do that because they kind of say, well, if I can kind of call all those guys Nazis, then some way down the line I might be allowed to criticize Hizb ut-Tahrir. It's a sort of political thing they do. Finally, very quickly, the previous round, but it answers two of the things, about the thing about political courage and also about the hijab. I've got to tell you this story. 13 years ago or so now, whenever it was, when France first banned the headscarf in public buildings, I remember doing a BBC discussion with a left-wing politician who will remain nameless, and an Iranian journalist friend of mine who is far more hardline than me on some of these questions. And the question was on this. I said, well, the French state has the right to do this. When people say, who is the French government? Well, they are the government of the Republic of France, and one can agree or disagree, but they do have that right. And anyhow, the Labour politicians spent the entire programme lambing into me and my Muslim Iranian colleague for our stance. We were called Islamophobes, everything else, the usual, what one was going to get used to in the years ahead. But I'll never forget that when we exited the studio, this person clapped me on the back and said, never forget, Douglas, we're all with you. And I said, well, what about the half hour live on air we just had, which was the more pertinent moment to make any such support felt? And the reply was straightforward. He said, you've got to understand, I've got a very large Muslim constituency. To which my Iranian friend said in one of the most beautifully polite Persian things, devastating things I've ever heard, said, I see, you are a coward.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.